They thought he was dead. And Evan Cross let them believe it. After the museum heist in Washington, D.C., the world was ablaze with speculation. News anchors called it the greatest art theft of the century, while law enforcement offered record-breaking rewards for any information. But all they had were shaky eyewitness reports, unverified thermal images, and a whisper of a name that sounded more like a myth than a man, the Ghost. In reality, Evan was alive, but just barely. He'd gone underground, abandoning his lab, his tech, even his identity. A forged passport and a fake name bought him a one-way ticket to Iceland, where the cold and isolation provided the perfect cover. He rented a tiny cabin on the edge of a fjord, miles from the nearest town. No phone, no internet, no mirrors. He couldn't afford to be seen, even by himself. The Ghost's skin was destroyed. He burned it in a steel drum behind the cabin, watching as the nanofibers turned to ash and scattered into the snow. He knew the suit was killing him. Every use had fried his neurons like live wires under his skin. The hallucinations had only stopped when he left the tech behind. But silence didn't bring peace. At night, he still heard the voices, the whispers from the edge of his mind. Sometimes he'd wake up thinking he was back inside the museum, running for his life. Other times, he dreamed he was truly invisible, not from sight, but from memory. A man no one remembered. A ghost in every sense of the word. And then, someone found him. It started with a letter. No stamp. No return address. Just a folded sheet of paper slipped under his cabin door one morning. On it, a single sentence typed in courier font. "We know who you are, Evan." At first, he thought it was a hallucination. But the paper was real. So were the faint boot prints in the snow, size 11, heavy treads, fresh. He didn't sleep that night. 3 days passed without incident. He debated fleeing again, maybe to the mountains of Chile or a monastery in Bhutan. Somewhere no one could find him. But deep down, he knew it was too late. Someone had breached the veil he fought so hard to hide behind. On the 4th night, his cabin's power shut down. He lit a lantern and sat quietly, waiting. The temperature dropped sharply, and the wind howled against the wooden walls. At exactly midnight, there was a knock at the door, 3 slow taps, deliberate and cold. He opened it. A man in a black coat stood outside, tall and clean-shaven, wearing gloves despite the frost. No badge, no gun, just a calm demeanor that somehow felt more dangerous than a weapon. "You're not easy to find," the man said. Evan didn't answer. "I'm not here to arrest you," the man continued. "I'm here to offer you something." The man introduced himself only as Raynor. No last name, no organization. But Evan saw through it. Government most likely. Maybe private intel. Either way, the kind of man who operated in files with redacted pages. Raynor placed a black folder on Evan's table and stepped back. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance stills of people entering secret facilities, stolen prototypes, maps with red circles, classified schematics. But one photo stopped Evan cold. It was his suit. Not the one he burned, the next version. Sleeker. More advanced. With a control interface he had never designed. "This isn't mine," Evan muttered. "No," Raynor said. "But someone rebuilt it. Based on your work. We believe the designs were extracted from your lab after you disappeared. You're not the only ghost now." Evan's stomach sank. The folder included a report, 3 high-profile robberies in 3 different countries, all within a month. Each one followed his same silent method. No forced entry. No digital trace. Just vanishing items and confused guards. Whoever had the tech had improved it. Raynor leaned in. "We want your help. Not as a criminal, but as the only person who understands how this works." Evan stared at the folder. The world he tried to escape had followed him into the snow. Worse, someone had weaponized his invention. If they perfected it, there'd be no stopping them. No system on Earth could catch someone who didn't exist. He had no choice. "If I do this," Evan said quietly, "I don't work for anyone. I work alone." Raynor nodded. "All we want is results." The next day, Evan left the cabin behind. No note. No trace. Just one set of footprints leading away into the white. the ghost was back. But this time, he wasn't planning a heist. He was planning a hunt. The city skyline of Berlin shimmered under a layer of late-night mist. From the rooftop of an old radio tower, Evan Cross surveyed the urban jungle through thermal lenses, scanning for unusual signatures. It had been 2 weeks since he left the Icelandic wilderness, and 2 weeks of chasing shadows. He wasn't the only invisible man anymore. Using Rayner's intel and his own encrypted archives, Evan had identified a pattern. The new thief, whoever they were, followed a similar MO but targeted more than just money. They were after technology, classified prototypes, experimental AI cores, and now, according to Evan's intercepted chatter, a piece of quantum hardware stored beneath a government-sanctioned tech lab outside Berlin. The heist was scheduled for tonight. Evan crouched beside a vent shaft, his breath steady. He no longer had the ghost skin, but he'd adapted. Using older cloaking tech and a few self-made tools, he moved like a professional, unseen, unheard. The injuries from his past were still there, in the backaches and flash headaches, but something stronger had returned: purpose. He climbed into the shaft and began descending silently through the duct system. Below him, the facility was buzzing with security. A dozen armed guards, motion sensors, biometric gates. None of it would stop the thief he was hunting. And Evan planned to confront them before they vanished. He reached the server floor just minutes before midnight. A soft vibration pulsed through the steel beneath his gloves. Someone else was already inside. He slipped into the shadows and waited. Then he saw it, a ripple in the air. Not a full silhouette, but a shimmer in the light, like heat waves twisting the air. The figure moved gracefully, bypassing security with the same ease Evan once did. They approached the quantum processor vault, placed a custom chip into the lock, and waited for the click. Evan stepped out. "You're good, but not good enough." The figure froze. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the air shimmered again, and the thief deactivated their cloak. A woman. Young, sharp-eyed, dressed in a new generation suit that looked even sleeker than Evan's original ghost skin. Her face was calm, but her eyes gave her away: surprise, calculation, and something else: recognition. "You're supposed to be dead," she said coolly. "You're using my work." "No. I perfected it." Evan glanced at the processor vault behind her. "Who are you working for?" She smirked. "Someone who's going to change everything." Before he could respond, she threw a flash pulse. Evan shielded his eyes, but the flash wasn't light, it was magnetic. His cloak systems glitched. The woman turned invisible again and bolted through the exit corridor. Evan chased her. Alarms erupted across the building. They sprinted through steel halls, dodging closing blast doors. Evan's instincts kicked in, reading her movement patterns, predicting her route. She reached a ventilation shaft, just as Evan launched a tracking dart into the air. It connected, tiny enough to go unnoticed, but powerful enough to transmit coordinates across encrypted satellites. She escaped. But now, Evan had her signal. He exfiltrated the building seconds before drones swept in. Back in his safe house, a rented garage on the outskirts of Berlin, he powered up his tracking interface. The signal led to a location deep in the Carpathian Mountains, Eastern Europe, near an old Cold War bunker. That wasn't the thief's base. That was who she worked for. Evan zoomed in on the satellite image. Not a facility. A fortress. Inside those mountains, a new organization was being built. Off-grid. Beyond borders. With access to stolen tech, brilliant minds, and now, his own weapon turned against him. A private army with invisibility? The world wouldn't stand a chance. He stared at the screen, jaw clenched. Rayner had said the US government wanted results, but Evan now knew this wasn't just about a rogue thief. This was about stopping a revolution before it began. And Evan? He was the only one who could do it. But to win, he would have to build a new ghost skin, one that wouldn't kill him. Evan stood in the middle of an abandoned Soviet-era workshop deep in Moldova, surrounded by tools, wires, and the ghost of his past. In front of him, mounted on a rusted mannequin, was the prototype of a new ghost skin suit. Not built for theft. Built for war. He'd spent 8 sleepless days modifying what was left of his early designs, replacing neural exposed circuits with temperature-regulated fiber, swapping out the volatile power core for a slow-release graphene cell, and adding a suppression system to protect his mind from the overload that once nearly drove him mad. But he knew this version came with a warning: one final mission. One last use. Then walk away, if you're still alive. He slipped it on, piece by piece. The suit adjusted to his body like a second skin. He took one slow breath and activated the cloak. He disappeared. Miles away, the Carpathian base pulsed with energy. Hidden beneath layers of rock and snow, the compound was like something out of science fiction. Clean corridors, automated turrets, glass rooms filled with stolen tech. But what rattled Evan most was the people. Not mercenaries, not soldiers, scientists. Dozens of them, working on technologies that shouldn't even exist. Quantum computing units, synthetic AI embryos, pulse wave suppression cannons. Evan realized this wasn't just a private operation. It was a breakaway civilization. He infiltrated the outer ring using thermal gaps in the wall's design. No cameras detected him. He was colder than the concrete. He glided past guards, bypassed digital barriers, and reached the inner chamber, where the woman in the upgraded cloak stood speaking to a man surrounded by 6 monitors. Evan stayed still, watching. The man wasn't a soldier either. He wore glasses, a blazer over a turtleneck, and had a calm, confident demeanor. But the screen behind him showed something horrifying. A global map, flickering with red dots, targets. Military labs. Government vaults. Nuclear silos. This wasn't about theft anymore. This was about control. "I told you he'd come," the man said without looking up. "Didn't I?" The woman turned. "He's here." The man smiled. "He's been watching us for 7 minutes." Evan's heart skipped. They knew. He moved fast, but not fast enough. The lights cut out. Anti-cloak scanners burst to life. Waves of radiation flooded the chamber, momentarily disrupting his invisibility. He became visible for a flash, long enough for a drone to shoot a paralyzing net at him. But Evan had planned for this. He fired a feedback pulse from his glove, short-circuiting the drone and diving through a side corridor. Alarms screamed. Security bots activated. Evan sprinted through the halls, tossing EMP seeds behind him. The suit strained, warning lights blinking red. He had 10 minutes, maybe less, before the cloak failed. He reached the mainframe room, the digital brain of the compound. Inside, he found what he didn't expect: his code. They hadn't just stolen his tech. They'd cloned his original neural encryption architecture. His work had become the foundation of this place. And that meant he could shut it all down. Evan inserted a flash drive loaded with a custom virus. It wasn't destructive, it was surgical. It would burn the suit control protocols, erase targeting data, and trigger self-lockdowns on every stolen system in the facility. As the virus uploaded, footsteps approached. The woman stood at the door again, this time her mask off. Her expression was unreadable. "Why'd you come back?" she asked. Evan stared at her. "Because I made a mistake. I let this exist." She stepped forward. "You think you're the hero now?" "No. I'm just the one who's willing to clean up my mess." "You can't stop it," she said. "It's too big." Evan activated the final line of code. "Then I'll make it small again." A surge of light flooded the screens. Throughout the base, systems collapsed. Drones dropped. Gates sealed. Backup generators failed. And outside, Raynor and a covert strike team launched their assault. The compound went dark. Evan made his escape through the ventilation tunnels as the entire mountain echoed with chaos. The woman didn't follow. She could have. But in her eyes, he saw it, the hesitation. By morning, the compound was gone. Shut down. Raided. Empty. But Evan had vanished too. Days later, in a quiet cafe in Prague, a news ticker scrolled across a TV screen. Secret tech ring dismantled. No suspects found. And in the corner, sipping tea and reading a physics journal, sat a man with tired eyes and a faint limp. His suit was gone for good. He had no intention of making another. He wasn't a ghost anymore. He was finally invisible.